Enough of this! You're stalling.
Nonsense.
What's up YouTube, 10ton here, and today I will be discussing the next time on Death Battle between Danny Phantom and Jake Long. But before we get on to that, let us discuss episode 127. Obi-Wan vs. Kakashi was a fantastic episode. From the multiple Obi-Wan memes to the stellar fight. It's up there with Goro vs. Machamp as one of the best episodes of the season. Looking back at my prediction, I'm happy with a lot of what I said. I was obviously wrong about the perfect Susanoo, and I gave Kakashi a bit too much credit in a few categories. I also failed to realize how potent the Force was and how devastating that lightsaber could be. However, I wasn't technically wrong. I specified that if Legends was used, then Obi-Wan would win. I also brought up the planetary level feat and his reaction speed being faster than light. I didn't specify a nanosecond, but still. If only the main movies were used, then yeah, I thought Kakashi would probably win, so I wasn't technically wrong. But I do feel a bit scummy for putting the technicality on my prediction, so I'm only going to give myself half a point for this episode. Kind of like I did with the Mega Man Battle Royale, simply because the prediction had too many factors going into it that made it too difficult to predict properly. On one hand, if I had known Legends was fair game, then I would have gone Obi-Wan 100%. But I also could have backed Obi-Wan up more during my normal prediction. I think this is the fairest way to judge the episode and my prediction as a whole, so that's what I'm doing. My prediction rate is now 4.5 wins to 3 losses. Let's hope I can keep that up going forward. With all that being said, let's get on to the next time. Jake vs. Danny is another episode that I've wanted for a long time. I watched both when I was young, but I was definitely more of a Danny Phantom kid. This episode was on my Season 2 bucket list, and it's nice to finally see these fights getting done. Now, if I could only get Ant-Man vs. the Atom, Dexter vs. Jimmy Neutron, Piccolo vs. the Martian Manhunter, and Meta Knight vs. Zero, then my old list will finally be complete. Fight at face value does seem kind of one-sided, but then again, it's never good to underestimate any character, especially when researching, so for my prediction, I tried to be as fair as possible to both fighters. During my research, I started with Jake simply because I'm less familiar with him, and I figured it would be a good idea to gather as much information as I could on the topic. Jake's physical strength is likely his best advantage in the fight. According to the numbers I could find, Jake can lift around 25 tons. I'm not sure how Danny compares to that, but from what I've heard, he has some notable strength feats around that level, so I'd say they are either even or Jake might be slightly stronger. Jake's fire breath and better martial arts are other notable advantages. He can fly at around 180 miles per hour from what I've found. Jake has some type of night vision, and he has a natural resistance to fire and ice attacks. Jake also knows the doppelganger technique, which allows him to make clones of himself to help himself in a fight. The clones do require a good amount of energy, so he needs to be careful with how many he summons at once. That's about all I know on Jake. I did, however, learn of a few key weaknesses. Jake has notably less defense around his stomach area compared to the rest of his body, and if Jake is hit behind the ear in a certain spot, he will die. Now, to be fair to Jake, Danny has no way to know this, but he could still get a lucky shot in, you never know. On to the Ghost Boy, Danny, just like Jake, can fly, has superhuman strength, and can make clones of himself. Danny can also turn invisible, he can become intangible, and he can possess people, which, as far as I know, Jake has no real resistance to. Danny can also create energy shields to protect himself. He has a slight healing factor for what I've seen. He can shoot ectoplasm blasts out of his hands as a long-range projectile. Danny can control and manipulate ice, which Jake is resistant to, but it will still give him a way to hold off Jake's fire breath. Danny, based on my notes, should be slightly more experienced, and I do think he is the more intelligent fighter. Danny's ultimate attack is the Ghostly Wail, a superhuman screech that would make even Black Canary blush. Danny also used to get exhausted when he used it, but in the Phantom Planet special, he used it multiple times with little to no problem. Danny's speed is another one of his big advantages in the fight. In one of the episodes of the show, he keeps up with a plane that should be flying at roughly 550 miles per hour. He is also shown to keep pace with a space shuttle, which should fly far faster than that. During Phantom Planet, he tanks hits from every notable ghost he has ever fought, all at once. Later on in the special, Danny, with the help of all the other ghosts, turns the whole planet intangible to stop a meteor from hitting it. I don't know how much energy that would require, but I'm sure Death Battle will gladly calculate that for us. Lastly, Danny has fought dragons before, and yes, it was a ghost dragon, but it still counts, and it does give him some combat experience against a fighter that would be similar to Jake. Now before you say it, yes, Jake has fought ghosts before. Shouldn't that put them both on an equal playing field? Well, no. Jake's ghosts were magical in nature, and Danny isn't magical at all. Plus, those ghosts were extremely basic and a complete pushover compared to what Danny is capable of. Jake had a hard time dealing with them, and for me, that seals his fate. For this prediction, I'm going with the ghost. Jake, clearly, is not a chump by any means, but Danny has far more going for him. Danny is more versatile, he is faster, just as strong, much more durable, and Jake has no way to deal with the possession or intangibility. Now, it's true that Danny could detransform into human if he is tired out or he pushes himself too far, but I don't think Jake is tough enough to pull that off. Danny beat his future evil self, and while yes, he didn't have all the powers Danny would eventually have, Danny still beat someone with his exact power set, who also had 10 more years of experience behind him. The last argument I generally see is that Danny's power set is better suited for ghost busting, which is true, but there is no reason to believe that his powers wouldn't work on Jake and wouldn't be effective on Jake. After looking at all the data and putting my thoughts together, I think that Danny won't be the only one going ghost in this fight. But what do you guys think? Are you going for the ghost, or are you hoping the dragon gets the upset? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I hope this episode lives up to what I've always wanted it to be, and I hope it's just as good as Goro vs. Machamp. With all that being said, this has been Tenton. Peace.